In 2011, we saw the original release of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but how does this legendary game run on hardware that released in 2005 versus the Anniversary Edition that we have today on modern gaming PCs and consoles? So guys, welcome to this direct comparison of the original Elder Scrolls V Skyrim as it appeared on the Xbox 360. This is actually my launch copy of the game that I picked up at the midnight launch of this game, and we're going to be comparing it to the newest version of Skyrim, the Anniversary Edition, as it appears today on ultra settings on my RTX 3070. But guys, I hope you guys enjoy this direct comparison as much as I've enjoyed making it for you guys. And if you're new to my channel, welcome to Live from My Basement, where I make cool new videos like the one you're watching right now every single week. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. But guys, let's dive into the video. So beginning with the comparison of the graphics and art, and Jesus, I do not remember this game looking like this. Just by looking at this vista, you can see there's much less detail in the trees in the vista. And the general lighting quality is far less than what I've gotten used to with the Special Edition. And switching over to Skyrim Anniversary Edition on the PC, it's a night and day difference. The graphical jump is quite huge, keeping in mind that there's no graphical mods installed here, it's just the vanilla Skyrim on 360 versus the Special Edition as it appears today. Next, we're going to take a look at the render distances when it comes to landscapes, and as you can see here on the 360 version of Skyrim, the grass and textures are loading in very close to the player, and there's a lot of texture and object pop-in. Not to mention that mountain range in the distance just kind of turns into a shapeless blob as it gets further away. But when it comes to the Special Edition, you'll immediately notice that the textures are loading in much further away from the player, and so are the NPCs. And that mountain range in the distance actually has details that you can actually see from this far away. Take Standing from the Skyforge, for example. On 360, when you look up towards High Hrothgar, you can barely make out the details of High Hrothgar and the mountain itself. Whereas on the Special Edition on a modern gaming PC, not only can you make out all the details of High Hrothgar, but much more details on the mountain. But the differences in render distances don't end with just the landscapes. As you can see here on Xbox 360, as I walk into Riverwood, I can barely make out the details on those NPCs as they load into the distance. Whereas in the Special Edition on modern hardware, not only is there much more detail on the NPCs in the far distance, but they also load in much further away, and there's much more detail in the local environment. And speaking of performance, one thing that I feel like we all take for granted is that Skyrim at launch on Xbox 360 ran at a locked 30 frames per second, and even the Special Edition when it launched on Xbox One and PS4 was also locked at 30 frames per second, but with modern gaming consoles and modern gaming PCs, we can jack up the frame rate much higher, which is an awesome thing. And moving on now to a comparison of the water and water effects between the two games, and in Skyrim at launch on Xbox 360, the water for the most part looks fine, though there's one thing that'll bother you the more you look at it, and that's that water, especially moving water, doesn't flow downriver, but depending on where you're standing, can flow directly towards you at shore, which is kind of weird. And when you're looking at a large body of water, the water stops rendering after a certain point and loses all movement. Whereas in Skyrim Special Edition, the water has been completely reworked with new art that looks much better than it did on launch consoles, and not to mention flowing water actually flows downriver instead of just flowing towards the shore, which looks much nicer. But it wasn't just the water that saw changes, as the snow shaders saw improvements as well. As Skyrim on Xbox 360, whenever you're looking at snow, you can't really make out much detail, and in some cases the snow is so bright white that you can't really see any detail at all. Whereas in the newer versions of Skyrim, the colors of the snow are calmed down considerably to the point where you can actually see it, and the tones are much cooler and easier to look at. Not to mention when you're looking at the snow up close, you can actually make out little sparkly bits that may have been in the 360 edition of Skyrim, but with the brightness of the snow you couldn't see them. Which leads us to a comparison of the night sky skyboxes between the two versions of the game, and as you can see here on the launch version of Skyrim on 360, the night sky doesn't look all that impressive, it's just a black sky with white stars. Whereas in the newer versions of Skyrim, the night sky can have this really cool northern light effect that looks gorgeous even today and is really good for capturing good looking wallpapers. So next we're going to take a look at another performance test, and we're going to see how long it takes to fast travel from Riften to the other side of the map to Markarth on Xbox 360, and I actually fast forwarded this, but I timed it and it took almost exactly 30 seconds to make the fast travel. So next I tested this on the Special Edition on my 3070 at Ultra settings, and it only took about 10 seconds, which, you know, isn't instant, but it is faster. And moving on to our next comparison, we're going to be taking a look at the fire and lighting effects between the two versions of the game. And as you can see here on Xbox 360, I mean, Skyrim's fires have always looked a little underwhelming. They don't really illuminate the darkness as much as I would like to see, and in some cases they don't illuminate the darkness at all. And this is the same case in the Special Edition, though I will say the fires themselves do look a little bit better, and I even noticed in this fire pit that the fire effects have been completely changed to the point where the fire will actually start and stop, and I guess that's kind of cool, but not really all that transformative. And speaking of fire, we're going to be doing a comparison of the fire magic effects between the two games, and as you can see here in Skyrim on Xbox 360, whenever I burn the environment, it actually does burn and char the environment black, which is a nice touch. Whereas in the Special Edition and Anniversary Editions of Skyrim, whenever you use magic spells to burn the environment, not only do you burn it and char it black, but you also leave glowing embers in the middle of the burned environment, which look pretty cool. And with our next comparison, we're going to be taking a look at some more of the lighting effects, whereas in the original release of Skyrim on 360, a lot of the lighting is pretty static when it comes to interacting with objects in the environment. Whereas you can see in the Special Edition, you actually have pretty impressive looking god rays that shine through the environment, which make the world look much more natural and realistic looking. Another thing that I found interesting is that the worlds are actually physically different between the two versions of the game. As you can see here on Skyrim on Xbox 360, when you're outside Riverwood and you look over here, there's nothing over here. But when you come to this location in the Special Edition and other newer versions of Skyrim, there's actually a little campground here. But if you go to another city like Windhelm, there's actually a campfire right next to the stables, but if you return to this location in the newer versions of Skyrim, there's not one at all, which I find kind of interesting. Another interesting change between the two versions of the game is that in Skyrim and Xbox 360, there's no depth of field, meaning that whenever you're looking at something, it doesn't matter how close it is to you, the entire image is in focus. Whereas in the newer versions of Skyrim, there's actually dynamic depth of field that allows you to focus on the objects that are closer to you while blurring out the background just like your eye naturally does in real life. Which leads us to another performance test, and with this comparison, I wanted to see just how much longer it takes to load into a new game of Skyrim on 360 the way it launched, versus on my gaming PC on ultra settings on my 3070, and on Skyrim I timed it, it took about 57 seconds to load into a new game, whereas in the newer versions of Skyrim on a gaming PC, on my gaming PC, it only took about 15 seconds. And with better hardware, it can be even faster. And with my final comparison in this video, I have to acknowledge the elephant of the room, which is the biggest difference between the launch edition of Skyrim on 360 and the newer versions of Skyrim we have today, which is mod support. You can transform the sandbox of Skyrim into whatever you want with mods, and whether you're just playing in survival mode or fishing, there's something here for everybody. Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching this direct comparison of the original Elder Scrolls V Skyrim as it originally launched on the Xbox 360 versus the newer version of Skyrim that we have today. And I just love seeing how this game has evolved, especially performance-wise, versus its original release on the Xbox 360 versus how it is now with the Special Edition and the Anniversary Edition over a decade later with all the different, performance enhancements. I just personally think it's interesting, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you guys. But guys, that's all I have for this video. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, be sure to drop a like on it, and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. But guys, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.